Welcome back everyone to Global Government News. This is Darko, and this is the second part of this news bulletin, the final video for the day. We just left off with this Press TV article, Iran on guard without military option, and this Iran's Joint Armed Forces chief who was talking about a new enslavement system. He said that it's a new type of super capitalism. Look at what he says, gradually taking its hub of power off the United States and is spreading globally. And it says he suggested that this, quote, back-breaking experience of the latest U.S. economic downturn has relegated America to the level of a weak country and giving rise to the appearance of a new kind of imperialism. It's very interesting what he says there. And then he goes on and says he further pointed out the U.S. was not in a situation where it could afford another war without going down. That was quoted. And so my belief is, because I've heard Stefan Molyneux mention this about how he doesn't believe that there's going to be a war with Iran because the U.S. is, pretty much bankrupt and they can't afford it. Well, I tend to think kind of opposite of that. I think that the bankers, the ruling elite, the powers that be, they like to restructure things, and much like with World War II, they got the European Union, the United Nations, NATO, they got all of that out of a war, right? And they got a kind of an artificial boost in the economy during the 50s. And so I think that if they want to restructure the United States and the global economy and political system, there's no other way to really do it but to have this another world war scenario. And they don't care about the United States and its sovereignty or its productivity. They're globalists, so they don't care about that, and they are in control of this republic, this country, this nation, the United States. So it's hard to really say that there's no way we're going to have a war, because this is not your traditional situation. This next article, Israel could go rogue on Iran in 1 year. Israel could launch a military attack against Iran within a year in an attempt to stop Tehran's nuclear program, even without a green light from the U.S., which they have received. The U.S. Congress, GOP side, has basically written a bill that gave Israel a green light to attack Iran. It says Jeffrey Goldberg, the author of the article published in the September issue of the Atlantic magazine, writes that, quote, a consensus emerged that there is a better than 50% chance that Israel will launch a strike by next July. Goldberg says that his assessment is based on conversations with more than 40 past and present Israeli decision makers, including extended discussion with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And yeah, of course, here you go right here. They quoted this. This is what I was just about to say. The report comes only after a week only after veteran intelligence professionals for Sanity, VIPs, a group of former CIA intelligence officers, warned that Israel will be destroyed if it attacks Iran. And what was the other thing that was created out of World War II? This little guy. In a memo to the U.S. President Barack Obama last week, VIPs warned that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is ready to go unilateral on Iran. Quote, wider war could eventually result in the destruction of the state of Israel. So Israel, which is the only entity in the Middle East that possesses nuclear weapons, has repeatedly voiced its determination to halt Iran's nuclear program, even through military means. And just a kind of a totally speculation and kind of theory that could be possible is that you never know. There's some people that believe that an oncoming economic collapse or a big war, like I said, will bring on this. It's a restructuring of the entire globe by the elites. Is that it could create this new world religion and really instill a need for world government. Of course, I don't believe that, but it'll create the certain environment, like problem, reaction, solution. It will create that environment for people to say we need a global government, an entity to help us, and we got to do away with Islam and Christianity, and then of course they have all of everything ready and in place for it. And speaking of our friends, Senator DeMint ratifying UN Children's Rights Treaty would turn parental rights, quote, over to international community. And it says Senator DeMint said that if President Barack Obama gets his way and the Senate ratifies the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the precedent would be set to place parental rights under the jurisdiction of the international community. Quote, "We believe we need to take clear action here in Congress to protect the rights of parents to raise their children," DeMint said on Wednesday in a panel discussion. Quote, "This treaty would, in fact, establish a precedent that those rights have been given over to the international community." And it's sponsoring a Resolution 519, which would protect parental rights, which is co-sponsored by 30 senators total. Only 4 more senators need to sign on to inform President Obama that he does not have enough votes in the Senate to ratify the treaty. Under some brief history, it says, under Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, treaties must be approved by 2/3 majority of the Senate for them to take effect. The UN adopted the Convention of the Rights of the Child on November 20th, 1989. By September 2nd, 1990, 20 nations signed on to enforce the treaty. Currently, with the exception of the U.S. and Somalia, 193 nations have signed on to enforce it. Lastly, nations that ratify the UN treaties are bound to adhere to them by international law. Stabbing spree suspect nabbed before Israeli flight. Elias Abulazam was about to board a plane for Israel when police arrested him in connection with a 3-month stabbing spree that left 5 men dead, 13 others wounded, and a Michigan City terror. In the moments before the bald, pudgy man in flip-flops and shorts was handcuffed, passengers saw him nervously talking on a cell phone, insisting he wasn't violent. The Israeli citizen and legal U.S. resident was charged Thursday in just one case out of Flint, Michigan, the battered industrial city where most of the stabbings occurred, but authorities said more charges are expected there in Ohio and Virginia. At least 15 of the 18 victims were black, but it was unclear whether the attacks were racially motivated. It says in Michigan, Genesee County prosecutor David Litton said authorities don't know the motive for the stabbings, and that despite the fact that most victims were black, there is no evidence race played a role. And it says that this individual is an Israeli citizen who is living in the United States with a green card. And of course, in that last article, they were kind of, when I was perusing through it, they said that, oh, he was a nice guy and a family guy, and this is totally surprising and shocking. Bystander confronted knifeman after murder. A man has described how he came face-to-face with a knifeman after a woman was savagely murdered in the street. From the London Telegraph, August 12, 2010. And it says Michael Herbert was confronted with a horrific scene after hearing a victim screaming near his home in Beckton, East London. He ran to Stansfield Road, where he found a man dressed in black, standing over the body of a woman whose throat he had been cut. Mr. Hubert, 47, said the man threatened him with a silver kitchen knife as he chased him to a house in the nearby Lymouth Road. The house had been set on fire. When riot police forced their way inside, they found the victim's mother had also been fatally stabbed. A suspect named locally as Sergei Zolotovsky was arrested after being discovered in the loft with his neck slashed. And he said he heard screaming and went around the building. He said the guy was standing over the body with a knife in his hand, and a woman was lying on the ground cut open. It was not a very nice scene to see. Quote, he stayed there for a few minutes, and then he started running away from the scene, so the two of us made chase. And I'm going to finish up with this article. Reuters, China school killer erupted after Elise Rowe. And not a very good description, but either way, the Chinese have been having a lot of knifings as well, and they say it's because of a growing economy. But to me, I think like a lot of other things, it's mind control. So you can disagree with me on that. That's my opinion. But it says that a Chinese man who hacked to death 7 young children and 2 adults in the latest in a series of deadly assaults on schools lashed out after an argument over kindergarten lease, neighbors and state media said. It says the succession of bloody assaults on schools has prompted officials to demand a show of force to deter such attacks, which have angered the Chinese public and stoked criticism of the government. As well, it's like, dude, you're not going to be able to prevent these type things. Like when people go into stores or schools or whatever and they shoot people up and commit suicide, that you can't prevent that. Even no matter how many metal detectors or anything, you have to fix society. You have to, your society is sick. It says triggers for the attacks have included pent-up grievances over lost jobs, business failures, broken relationships, and a new home that officials had ordered torn down. This was the 6th attack on school children in China since March, a succession of attacks that has already prompted calls for more security at schools and worries about the social melees that some see underneath China's rapid economic growth. Thank you.